Good afternoon. How are you today? On this September 17, Wednesday afternoon, I hope that you're doing well. Oh my gosh, just enjoying the weather here in Florida with my family. I've been so lucky to come for so long as we had a new grandson. So I've been spending a lot of time with my 3-year-old grandson, helping take care of him, and just working part-time online. So really just taking advantage of being away and coming home soon. So today I found this in the Lisa TerKeurst book called The Best Yes, and it's 5 parts to decision making. Not sure what decisions you're making for your life, but I thought this was really interesting. So I want to read parts of this, and then I have some scriptures I'd like to go to. And the scriptures are Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and Romans 8, 26 to 28. So God's word can guide us. I want to just read a couple excerpts out of here. It says the 5 parts to making a decision. Let's see. It says these verses in Proverbs hinge on one crucial thing. She doesn't want us to miss this. Without this crucial thing, we could mistakenly think there are only 3 parts to making a decision: analyzing the decision, making the decision, and then owning the decision. Here, let's go to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 first. So Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not unto thine own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." So of course we want to go to the Lord in prayer anytime we're trying to make decisions. So she says sometimes she thinks there's only 3 parts decision making: analyzing the decision, making the decision, and then owning the decision. But actually, she says there's 5 parts to making a decision. She says the first and the fifth are almost the same. They are like the top and bottom buns of a hamburger. They don't look exactly alike, but they come from the same dough, and they hold the process together. So number 1 is trusting in God, placing my desire under his authority. Number 2 is analyzing the decision. Number 3 is making the decision. Number 4 is owning the decision. And number 5 is trusting God to work good, even from the not so good parts. She says, look at the 3 versions of, she had 3 versions of Proverbs 3, 5 to 6. No matter what version you read, it is clear the opposite of trusting God is leaning on your own understanding, trying to figure out things all on our own. And the evidence of whether or not I'm trusting him is shown by where I place my focus. After all, we steer where we stare. And I loved that. She told this really funny story where she says she told this story of where she was driving with two friends to do a webcast to a church in California. And they wanted to follow the rest of their team in a big red Suburban. She stayed right with them. If they sped up, the other car speeded up. She said they took an exit, so she took the same exit. They drove through neighborhoods, so they drove through neighborhoods. At one point, it almost seemed as if they were trying to play some sort of a game and purposely lose us. But we were not easily deterred. We stayed right with them. But she said then things got a little confusing when pulling into the driveway of the house instead of the church. And then things got really strange when the people got out of the car and were not our ministry team. They glared at us as if to say, "I don't know who you freaky people are or why you're following us, but one step closer and we'll have you arrested." Well, isn't that just 10 shades of awesome? She said they put the car in reverse, waved while mouthing how sorry we were, and drove until they were no longer in sight. Then we called the friends we thought we were following and explained we might be a bit delayed. Why? We lost sight of the red of the right red SUV for just a few seconds behind a semi-truck, and look how off track we got when we stared at the wrong vehicle. We steered where we stared. If I'm trusting myself, I will stare at all the possible ways I could fail. If I'm trusting God, I will stare at all the possible ways He'll use this, whether I fail or I succeed. When I stare at failure, I feel it. I'll fear it. I'll convince myself it's the worst thing that could happen, and I'll stay stuck. But when I stare at all the possible ways God can use this, whether I succeed or fail, I'll face my decision. I'll convince myself that it's better to step out and find out than to stay stuck. And I'll reach for the next bar. All those years ago on the playground, it would have been better if the teacher had just said, Lisa, staying stuck in your fear is way worse than any other bad choice you could make right now. If you let go of that bar and happen to catch the next one, you'll move forward and prove to yourself that you can do this. Or if you let go of that bar and fall, you'll see the ground isn't so far away. It won't feel great, but it won't be worse than all the stress and exhaustion you're experiencing just hanging there on the first bar. Years later, my youngest daughter was playing on the same kind of monkey bars with a friend. I wasn't there to see exactly what happened, but her friend's mom called to say Brooke had fallen. Later, when I took her to the doctor, he confirmed what the swelling in her arm had already told us. It was broken. But here's the amazing thing. Brooke's arm healed, and today she still climbs the monkey bars. I still won't attempt them. Sometimes it's easier to overcome a fall and a break than fear of failure. How many times have we found ourselves in this exact same place with decision making? We get both hands on the bar and determined to pursue something. We swing out, but then suddenly we can't move. I stare at the ground. I think it all depends on me. I don't feel capable. I feel uncertain. Fear grips the fibers of my muscles and strangles them into paralyzed strings. I want to shift from trusting myself to trusting God. But how? Fear makes the gap between where I am and trusting God seem an impossible chasm. I love this next part. It says, recently I surveyed people through Twitter and Facebook with this question. What do you think is the biggest reason people struggle to make decisions? Overwhelmingly, as in it's almost every answer, was fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the failure, fear of getting hurt, fear of what others will think, fear of rejection, fear of missing out on something better, fear of making the wrong decision. I absolutely understand all these fears. I wrestle with them myself, and some wrestling with fear is good. It can keep us from temporary bouts of stupidity. She says, here's the thing that keeps me from staying stuck. There is no such thing as a perfect decision. Love that. She says, as crazy as it sounds, I've stayed stuck in analysis paralysis so many times trying to figure out which choice is the perfect one. And if I couldn't pick the perfect one, I'd rather stay stuck. Or at least that's what my irrational mind thought. But in actuality, being stuck on bar one was the most disappointing place to say, perfection is an illusion. She says, are there good choices and bad choices? Yes, of course. We talked about that quite a bit in the last chapter on chasing down our decisions. But at this point in my life, I'm not getting tripped up as much in the good versus the bad decisions. She says, as long as you desire to please God with your decisions, no decision you make will be completely awful. Nor will any decision you make be completely awesome. Every decision is a package deal of both. Every thrill has an element of risk. Every leap of faith has moments of uncertainty. And every great success story has elements of failure. In other words, since there is no perfect choice, I don't have to be paralyzed by the fear that I'm not making the exact right decision. Again, I want to please God with this decision, but I also want to demonstrate my trust in Him by actually making a decision, having made peace with the fact that it won't all be perfect. There is no perfect job. There is no perfect school. There is no perfect spouse. There's no perfect ministry. There's no perfect church. There's no perfect way to raise kids. There's no perfect house. There's no perfect route. There's no perfect decision. She says, each of these choices will just have enough imperfections to make some combination of good and not so good. Even if you are following God and He clearly directs you to make a certain decision, that choice will not be perfect. There is no perfect decision, only the perfect surrendered decision to press through our fears and know that God is working in us to bring about good through us. Let's state it one more time. There are no perfect decisions. She says, the first here, and it's so important to understand this for two reasons. The first reason is that it may help us not be so deathly afraid of making a mistake. Even right choices will have elements of things that might feel difficult. And second, it may free us up a bit from second guessing our decisions when the imperfections of those choices present themselves. Here, I want to skip to this part. She says, here's where my certainty is. My imperfections will never override God's promises. God's promises are not dependent on my ability to choose well, but rather on His ability to use well. And then she says, God will use the good and not so good parts of the decisions we make. A very popular verse reminds us of this. Romans 8:28 says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to His purpose. She said, don't miss this crucial part. For those good of those who love Him, we must have at the core of our hearts a love for God and a surrender to God if we want to be guided by God. She says also, let's read verses 26 and 27. So let's read all of that. It says, likewise the Spirit also helpeth our infirmities, for we know not what we should pray for as we ought, but the Spirit itself maketh intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. And He that searcheth the hearts knoweth what is the mind of the Spirit, because He maketh intercession for the saints according to the will of God. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to His purpose. So if your heart and mind are aligned in the direction of God, you don't have to agonize to the point of paralysis over the decisions before you. We will steer where we stare. So stare mightily at God and His plan. And if you don't know His plan, stare mightily at His living word in your life, and His plan will unfold day by day, decision by decision. Take one of your hands, release your grip, and reach. That next bar will be there, and you should fall. And should you fall, the ground isn't so far away. All right, sister, that's your encouragement for today. All things are possible with God. We will keep our eyes on Him and know that all things work together for good to those who love Jesus. I hope you have an amazing day. I love you.